March 4th, 2026. Good evening, my late night listeners. This is Sunny with Nite Muse Media, and tonight we follow a signal carried on smoke. For thousands of years, people across cultures have burned sacred plants: sage, cedar, sweetgrass, juniper, allowing the smoke to drift through homes, temples, and other gathering places. This practice is called smudging. In many indigenous traditions, the rising smoke is believed to cleanse a space, carry a prayer, and restore balance between the physical and spiritual worlds. To some, it is ceremony, and to others, it is symbolism. But here's the question that caught my attention: what if the smoke is doing more than we think? What if ancient ritual and modern science are touching the same signal from different directions? Tonight, we explore the chemistry of sacred plants, the history of cleansing smoke, and what happens in the air around us when tradition meets biology. Because sometimes the oldest practices on earth are not just stories. Sometimes they are observations. They're just waiting for science to catch up. Across the world, cultures have used smoke and ritual. Native American traditions, they use white sage, cedar, and sweetgrass in purification ceremonies. And in Asia, temples burn incense during prayer. While in Europe and the Middle East, frankincense and myrrh have been used for centuries in sacred spaces. Even in ancient Greece and Rome, aromatic plants such as rosemary, thyme, and juniper were burned in homes in early medical settings. Physicians believed the smoke could cleanse the air and help prevent illness. Centuries later, during outbreaks of plague in Europe, hospitals and sick rooms were sometimes fumigated with burning rosemary, juniper, and other aromatic herbs. The belief was that the rising smoke could purify the air and protect both patients as well as caregivers. Of course, they did not understand yet bacteria or microbes, but long before germ theory existed, people noticed that certain plants seemed to make spaces just feel cleaner, healthier, even calmer, which raises another interesting thought. When traditions appear in many different cultures, separated by oceans and languages and centuries, it may be worth asking if they were all noticing the same signal. Smoke has long been seen as a bridge, something that rises from earth toward the sky. But beneath the symbolism lies something more physical. Plants contain complex chemical compounds, and when burned, those compounds enter the air around us. And that is where the story begins to get really interesting, because we're not just dealing with something mysterious in our minds, we're dealing with physical molecules. In 2007, researchers published a study in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology. They investigated what happens when medicinal herbs are burned in a room, and the results surprised them. Airborne bacteria in the room dropped by over 90%. And that reduction, it lasted for nearly 24 hours. The smoke itself appeared to carry compounds capable of reducing microbial populations in the air. Now, that does not prove spiritual cleansing, but it does suggest something remarkable: that some traditional plant smoke does produce antimicrobial properties. White sage contains compounds such as cineol and camphor. Cedar, it releases aromatic oils known to inhibit certain kinds of bacteria. Juniper smoke contains an antiseptic compound. Rosemary and thyme contain natural compounds like thymol, which modern studies show can slow bacterial growth. In other words, sacred smoke may alter the environment in ways thousands of years ago people could observe, even if they did not explain it with modern chemistry. When modern laboratories they take these plants, they test them, and they find antimicrobial compounds, we're not discovering something new. We are rediscovering what people quietly observed thousands of years ago. I think that's exciting. But science alone cannot define smudging. For indigenous cultures, this practice, it's not simply burning herbs. It's ceremony. There are prayers, intentions. There are special protocols taken for gathering the plants respectfully. And for many communities, the smoke represents purification of the mind, body, and the spirit. So while science may measure chemical changes in the air, the meaning of the ritual belongs to the cultures that carried it forward. And perhaps that's part of the lesson. Human beings have always observed the natural world closely. Long before laboratories existed, people learned through experience what plants healed, what smoke preserved, what scents drove insects away. Tradition often begins with careful observation, which leads to a broader thought. Across history, humans have used smoke for cleansing. And we're not just talking spiritually, we mean practically. Smoke preserves food, and it does drive away pests. It disinfects environments. So when ancient people burned certain plants in homes or gathering places, were they simply performing ritual? Or were they responding to something they had noticed again and again and again? A signal hidden in the air. Perhaps the deeper question is not whether smudging is mystical or scientific. Perhaps the question is simpler. How many traditions began with people quietly paying attention to the world around them? Because when knowledge is passed down long enough, it begins to look like wisdom. There is something quiet and humbling about that. Modern science often measures what ancient cultures already sensed. Not always, but sometimes. Sometimes knowledge travels through stories long before it travels through laboratories. Sacred smoke may be ritual, it may be chemistry, it may be psychology, or perhaps it's a little of all three. I suspect the latter is the truth. Either way, it reminds us of something important. Human beings have always searched for ways to bring balance to the spaces where we live, sometimes through prayer and through observation and through careful listening to the world around us, and sometimes through smoke rising slowly into the air. Follow the signals, question the noise, and I'll see you on the night side.